Well, hello everyone, this is R.J. Cooper. Well, today I'm talking to you about iPad alternatives. The iPad, since a year ago April, has just taken over our whole field. It's amazing how one product can literally take over a field. But you rarely hear Mac or PC anymore. People are just iPad crazy. However, I've found that the iPad, in some cases, is not the right tool for the job. And there are probably about 10 to 15 good reasons not to get an iPad or use an iPad. Okay, so what I've done here is I've created an alternative to the iPad. And I'm going to scroll down here, and this is the section that I'm concerned about right here. However, in the time since its introduction, many people found that the iPad is not the tool for their needs. There is a list of reasons why this is. Click here to read them at the bottom of this image. But the biggest impediment was that everything for the iPad must go through Apple. Well, there's a lot of IT people out there around the country and the world that just don't like Apple. They don't want anything to do with Apple. ITs are really very Windows-based. So I'm going to click on this link, and we're going to go through these one by one real quickly. If a Switch user and want complete control over the device, the iPad simply won't allow total control by anything other than finger touch, swipe, or a pointer that is electrified. There are ways to electrify pointers, even head pointers. They're a little tricky, but they exist. But the iPad really wants you to touch it with your finger, not your knuckle, not your palm, and it also wants a very specific touch. On, off. It doesn't like any movement while you're touching. That's a good reason not to use an iPad. Also, as far as global control, that's about to change just a little. Origin Systems is coming out with a system called Tornado, which should give some type of global control over an iPad, an iOS device. We call them iOS. It stands for iPhone Operating System. So that's the iPod Touch, the iPhones, and the iPads. So if you're looking for global switch control, though, I just don't think that the iPad is the right tool for the job. I'm on the same concept, but a little different as far as access methods. If you need joystick or trackball or head tracker or eye control or any other type of alternative global control, then the iPad's not going to do it. It just doesn't give you total access to the operating system. Some people just don't want to mess with iTunes. Personally, I'm one of them. My daughter loves it. She can spend hours on it, but there are times when it mystifies even me still. Here's another one. I just responded to an email from a person who says that they're computer proficient, and they asked me if they can purchase apps through me, indicating that they don't really know what they're talking about on the iPad because, of course, everything goes through the App Store. There are exceptions, but there really are rare exceptions when you have to buy a lot of something, and then you can go through Apple's Enterprise program. And there are even other ways, but by and large, it's going to be by credit card via the App Store. You need access to the operating system, files, menus, and other user interface aspects. Personally, I like going into the C drive or my hard drive on my Mac and knowing what goes where. On the iPad, on the iOS, it's a different way of thinking. You can't really access your files directly. You just have to trust that they'll go to the right place. There is document sharing and file sharing, but once again, through iTunes, you have to know a bit about what you're doing. Not much, but it's another layer. If your user messes around with the home button, thus exiting the app, he or she is supposed to stay in. That's a problem if they're constantly pressing the home button. There actually is a very easy solution using My Carry Case for that, in which we just flip the iPad around so the home button is covered by the leather of the carry case. Mine is one of the only ones that will allow doing that, and that eliminates the home button completely. Here's a big one that most people don't think about. If your user cannot slide the slide to unlock slider to get into their iPad, I make a training app called Slide to Unlock specifically for teaching people about that. But there are people who just can't do that. Interestingly, with a Bluetooth switch interface such as one of mine's or AbleNet's, it actually gets past that. If you press your switch through my switch interface or AbleNet's Bluetooth, it automatically brings you back to your Apple or wherever you were on your iPad without having to deal with the slide to unlock. Cool trick, eh? And finally, most of all, your IT department simply doesn't want to deal with Apple or iPads. This is really true. Now, I found that people in our field of special needs have no real dislike of apples. Unfortunately, if you're in a school district, you're not the last word. The IT is the last word. And most of them just don't like Apple. They're very Windows-based. They like control. So I'm going to pause for a moment and make sure that we're doing okay. A few hand raises, a few yeses, just let me know that we're still on track. There's one, there's two, and there's three. That's good. Must be the same three over and over that are responding. I'm going to put my microphone on pause just in case any of you have any suggestions, comments about what I've just done, and then you can use your voices if you'd like. So I'm putting my microphone off.
If you wish to use your microphone headset, you can press F2 on your keyboard.
There's also a button on the bottom left of your tool area that has a picture of a microphone with the hotkey Control plus F2. You can just click on that button. Well, okay, I'm going to proceed unless someone types something in or raises their hand if they have a question. Somebody raised their hand. Unfortunately, I can't tell who it is. Well, now they've unraised their hand. Yeah, I'm not sure how to tell who's raising their hand right now. Maybe Rosemary can help?
Yes, Shane. Shane, if you have a question, you can go ahead and you can either use the chat box to type in your question or press F2 on the keyboard, or you can click on the icon, the microphone icon in the lower left corner.
Well, I'm not sure what just happened. So Shane is raising his hand, but I'm not sure what I should do at this point.
RJ, you can go ahead and move forward. I'll provide some support with Shane. Tech support.
The first part of your audio cut out there, Rosemary. Make sure when you guys speak to give yourself a second after you do Control F2 or after you click on that audio for microphone, wait a second and then start speaking.
This is Judy. I cannot see my other window when I'm looking at your desktop.
Judy, you may have that minimized. It's probably somewhere in the background, because I can see RJ Cooper's Internet Explorer.
Judy, Eric Appel just said, go to View and uncheck Show Presentation.
Great. Now I can see the window and your presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so on we go. There is another reason that I should add to here. That is size. Size does matter when it comes to our users and learners. And the iPad screen is fairly small in comparison to like a 17-inch screen on a PC or Mac, which has become the standard. It's very hard to buy a display that's under 17 inches these days. And when you look at the iPad in relation to a 17-inch screen, quite a bit smaller. So I am also updating my Super Auggie page, and I'm going to go to that here. I'm just going to type it in here. And this is an old version right here, but it's the same size. It's a 12.1-inch screen. And I'm using an Asus, A-S-U-S tablet for that I purchased from the Microsoft Store, and then I add my own spin on it. I customize it and add my own adaptations, such as my own AAC software. But I've updated this. These are back from 2005, these pictures, but size does matter. And if you need something bigger than an iPad, well, you can't stretch an iPad. And there are no real alternatives to iPads. We're starting to get there with some other companies, such as BlackBerry is making the Playbook, by the way, which is as much as an iPad. And then there are a few Android devices that are smaller, such as the Samsung Tab and the Motorola Zoom, but those are smaller than an iPad. So the choices for these very portable devices are still quite limited. And I'm the first one that I'm aware of that's making a Windows 7 alternative to the iPad. So here's the actual iPad 1 right there. And here is my answer to it. This is the exact same size. It's a tad thicker, a tad heavier, but very insignificant. This is in one of the carry cases that I provide. As you can see, there's a hole for a camera there. There's the home button. And remember a moment ago I said for those kids that perseverate on hitting the home button, you just flip the unit around, whether it's an iPad or my Auggie, so that they can't get to the home button. So I'll scroll down here a bit. There's my daughter. Some of you have been following my daughter since she was 1, when I used to use early pictures of her showing different things. She's not disabled, but she doesn't mind posing for me. And you guys are the ones that actually ask to see her every once in a while. So I thought I'd put her here. But it shows the wearability of the device. Now that's a key phrase that I'm using that most of you will just think is just another cute phrase. But the key word here is wearability versus carrying. When a user, especially one with autism, wears their device, they just treat it differently than carrying their device over one shoulder or in their hand. Wearing just brings it into their being. And until you notice the difference, you just don't see it. Wear it, they just bring it into themselves. Very important consideration that most of us don't consider. It's got to become part of them in order for it to become part of their voice. And this should not be minimalized or underemphasized, the concept of wearing something versus carrying it. We come down here. Now, stands are a very good point or issue to bring up this point, and that is special needs stuff versus regular stuff. Now, in this picture right here, I'm showing you my tablet stand for an iPad or my Auggie. This is a very sturdy stand that's almost impossible to knock over. If we were to look at any other stand on the regular iPad market, you can knock them over without even blinking. None of them are sturdy. I don't care which one you show me. I'd love for you to send me a picture of one that's truly unknockable overable. There's a new word for you. But my stands are meant to be really for our purpose. And I brought this up in the Jeremy Brown's I Teach iPad work area. It's called I Teach. Jeremy Brown is the guy that runs that. And he sends you blurbs on everything iPad, allegedly for special needs, but I find that about 50% of it is for non-special needs. And all the stands that I've looked at, all the cases that I've looked at, they're not for special needs and they don't fit the bill. And people will try to cheap out on these things, which is a good try, but then have something that can be knocked over easily or not carried or not thought about as I do for special needs. That's a big point. Speaker, the iPads, whoops, I'll have to fix that link. The iPads by themselves are not loud enough. The iPad 2 is a bit louder than the iPad 1, but still Most people listen to their iPads when they're using it for AAC. They listen to it in a quiet room and they go, oh, that'll be loud enough. And then they get into a multi-purpose room, a mall or a park, and it's not loud enough. So I have different speakers for the different iPads and my Auggie that make the sound via cordless Bluetooth about twice as loud as it would normally be. And they just super Velcro on the back of your Auggie or on the back of the iPad or in lots of different places. But once again, special needs really makes the difference. Someone like myself that's thinking, how can this be useful for special needs and not just your regular mainstream? Mounting, same thing. There are no other wheelchair mounts except for, welcome to the band, AbleNet. They have now have their mobile accessory store. Took them about 9 months, but now they're the only ones that are competing with me making these things. And they make a stand for iPads. I have 4 different stands for iPads. These are 2 of them. The mini arm on the left, the articulating arm on the right. I'm just going to bop over here real quickly. I also have my shorty arm. There's the mini arm. There's the articulating arm. And the good old magic arm. This is actually a different magic arm than the ones that you're used to. It's one that I'm now producing. And it still uses the tension at the elbow that you screw in rather than that old spring-loaded system by AbleNet and the other people using the universal mount. So this one is not spring-loaded. It just smoothly tightens and loosens, and it does a wonderful job. But those are the 4 arms that I'm using, and they're different priced from $100, very reasonable, up to $250. I'm also using this special holder for my Auggie and for the iPad so that we get a nice, good hold on the iPad here. And you can see it right there, and right there, and right there. Nice, strong hold on the iPad using the good old super clamp down here, which everybody in our field uses for attaching to a wheelchair or attaching to a bed rail or a table. Okay, I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to turn my microphone off, see if you have any questions or want to type anything in.
This is Dean. I was wondering, do you really have Microsoft Windows 7 installed on an iPad, or is that just a display picture?
Well, it's not an iPad. It's a PC natively running Windows 7, and it just happens to be the one I chose is the one that has the same size, dimensions, and weight as an iPad 1. So I'm not running Windows on an iPad. I'm running Windows on an iPad-like device, which is a PC with respectable specifications, very similar in looks and feel to an iPad.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like there are no more questions on that. So when I sell something, I like for you guys out there to be able to open the box and get started right away. Now, an interesting phenomena has occurred with AAC software in the past year since the iPad, and that is the software that was predominantly used on these PCs, such as the Dynavox V series and the Mercury, which I'm not even sure is made anymore, and the Echo by Frankie Romich, and a few other Augcom devices that were running Windows, some version of Windows on them. Almost all of them were using Speaking Dynamically Pro with BoardMaker, which is a $750 package. Almost as much as one of my Auggies by itself and more than the iPad. And then came along the iPad, and boy, we're just getting inundated with AAC apps on the iPad. There's just a new one I found out yesterday. There's probably 30 right now. And they all do basically the same thing in varying degrees of understanding. None of them is an SD Pro. The most, I would call the most full-featured one, of course, is Pro Loco To Go. Very nice project there, but it still doesn't do as much as SD Pro. Most of them, though, are $99 or less, with some of them being free for the starter app. And when we compare $99, or even ProLocal to go for about $200, less than that, to a $750 SD Pro, you have to wonder what the differences are. Well, that's a good point. I've been wondering if Dynavox Mayor Johnson will yield to that at some point and say, well, we have to lower the price of our AAC software because people are doing it for much less on the iPad using other apps coming out right now. Oh, hand raised there. It looks like Shane. Shane is raising the hand, and I guess I'll turn my microphone off and ask if there's anything I can do for Shane.
OJ, I've been wanting to ask you this for a while, but why are you passionate about special needs and specifically assistive technology?
Ah, there's a good question from years and years ago. I was at the University of Utah studying computer science in 1983, and I wanted to do something different with it than anyone else was doing with computers. I toyed with the idea of joining the Peace Corps and using computer knowledge to do things around the world, but computers were nowhere near as ubiquitous as they are now, so that didn't make any sense. So I just racked my brain of thinking, how can I use computers differently than anybody else? I never had any special needs contact, and none of my relatives were special needs, so it was just a matter of thinking until I came up with the idea of using a computer at the university level with somebody at the vocational rehabilitation division in Salt Lake City, Utah. So I walked in and said, well, computers and disabled people, anything? They hooked me up with a OT up at the University of Utah Medical Center who said, we have Sarah, who's post-coma. She was one of those statistics that you read about, prom night, drinking and driving. 7 years later, she wakes up as if she thought it was the next day after prom. And they gave her to me. I was an undergrad at the time, and they just let me do anything I want. I hooked her up with a Tash King keyboard and an Apple IIe and an Echo 2 speech synthesizer. And within about 2 weeks, I had her creatively spelling some simple messages. And then I found a little niche for me, and I said, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So on we go. Thank you for asking that. That does get asked quite often, and I'm more than happy to tell people about it. So that pretty much takes care of the Auggie itself. The specs on it, I do a really nice spec sheet here for you. For actual specs, click here to view my comparison of the iPad 1 and the Auggie. So I'm going to click on that. And for those of you that want to later can come back. And you can see that they're almost identical, but mine truly is a different creature completely. And then I compare all the specs that you'd ever want to hear about right here. So you can come back to it at your leisure. Now, onto the software. Once again, I'll remind you that I like to get things such that you open the box and you're good to go. And so I put my own AAC software on here. It's a competitor, if you will, an alternative to Speaking Dynamically Pro. Back when I started selling an alternative to Dynavoxes, I didn't want people to have to pay the $750 for SD Pro. So I made my own. It took about a year, and I used all of you guys. Some of you maybe even have been in on the beta testing. But over a year, I listened to all SLPs and interested parties to guide me in making a viable SD Pro that I could include at no charge on my Auggie devices. And that has been refined over the years, and this is my PTP, which stands for Point to Pictures PC, because it's for a PC. And it does everything that SD Pro does. I've even licensed the board maker pictures from Dynavox Mayor Johnson with their blessing. And it's basically like an SD Pro, but it's made with you guys so that it's much simpler, and it's actually a bit more powerful. It can do things like control all your entertainment devices. It can control X10 and Insteon devices, all wirelessly through Wi-Fi. And it allows you to use text-to-speech, in which I packaged 2 of the NeoSpeech voices, which are very high quality. and all the pictures, or you can record your own message for each. Let's face it, all AAC software is basically the same. You create buttons or cells, you put pictures on them or text, and then you define what happens when you click on that picture or scan to that picture or text, and then you might put a link from that picture to another board completely. Interestingly enough, there are very few of the AAC apps available now that actually have that simple linking capability. I've been bugging at least 2 of the app developers to add it to their apps, just trying to help them. I have nothing to gain by it, just trying to make the app better, but one of them has created a very convoluted manner of linking boards, and the other one hasn't done it at all, but says that it is one of their requests. So that is my PTPPC, and I'm not going to really go into the detail of it because it's just like any other AAC program. It's just that it's included with mine, it's very user-friendly, and it has all the capabilities of something like SD Pro. So I'll pause for a moment and ask if any of you have any further questions about the AAC software that I include. Okay, on we go. Looks like none of you guys had questions about the software, understanding that it's a program. Now that's an interesting word, program. I still get people on about a weekly basis that say, does my Auggie run apps? And I have to laugh, but I can't, of course, laugh at them. I have to laugh just out loud here. An app is nothing more than an Apple word for a program on an iOS device. That's all app means. So when somebody says, does it run apps? Well, we've been running programs on PCs and Macs and Apple IIe's for the past 30 years. But for some reason, when people hear app, they think that now computers are running apps, which they are. We just call them programs when they're on a computer, and we call them apps when they're on an iOS device, or these days, even an Android device, and now Crackberry or Blackberry, their playbook. Looks beautiful. So program versus app, of course my Auggie runs apps because it runs programs. It's completely unlocked to you, so you can put anything on it. The accessory pack that's optional for it would include a nice portable DVD drive that gets its power from the USB port. It does have 3 USB ports on it through an adapter that plugs into the dock connector, and it's just a full PC running Windows. I'm just going to scroll down here and see if anything else pops out at me as far as talking about the Auggie. Other than the price, as you can see, it is $9.99 for the basic Auggie, and that includes the dock adapter with the 3 USB ports, a carry case, a tablet stand, and the speaker. And the accessory pack has the keyboard, the DVD-CD player, and a carry case for everything. So it's quite reasonably priced. One thing that I've added to this that I've always wanted to do, and I did it for my old mini Auggie, and that is accident protection. I'm the only one for special needs that's offering something of this nature. And this is a 2-year cover-to-cover accident protection on the Auggie or anything involved with it, in which I'll just repair or replace it. The only other people that I'm aware of that do this are HP offers one and the Microsoft Store offers one. But people are taking advantage of that. And that allows me to create like a little slush fund with this money right here to be able to use if I need to purchase a brand new one. I then have this little slush fund in order to purchase a new one for those guys that end up breaking their Auggie accidentally. And then for you insurance people, which is an issue, of course you know that it's very difficult to get an iPad funded through insurance. The key for getting a device funded through insurance is to call it that right there. If you call it a computer or a voice device or an iPad, that's not what they want to hear. Remember that your insurance providers, Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance companies, it's just a clerk entering these things into their system. And it has to match what they call a HCPCS code. So this is what they want to see. You enter this in, and it's going to match their system, and they're going to process it. You put the word computer in there, or environmental control, or something like an iPad, it's not going to make it through. So this right here doesn't change anything that I do. All it does is change how the billing looks on the invoice that you'll submit so that you can get either reimbursed or they'll pay for it. We don't work with insurances at all. We just give you this little in so that you know how to get things past an insurance. On the issue of funding, some of you might ask how to get an iPad funded or an Auggie funded when insurance is not an option. Most people don't even think of this. Your local service clubs. Almost everyone I've directed to their local service clubs like Rotary or Lions, they get things funded of this nature because that actually is the mandate of the Elks Club, is to help situations exactly like this. So you, for purchases under $500 or $1,000 are right in there, go to Rotary, go to Lions, give them a call. They'd rather have you do a short presentation than show Fred shooting another deer. And you bring a little short video and you show the need and you walk out, and sometimes less than a week later you get a check in the mail for exactly what you need. So I'm going to end the funding area on that. Any questions about funding? Well, I've come to the end here. I was going to go into the software more, but nobody has that need, which is fine. And I've talked about the Auggie, which was my goal here. So unless we have other further questions, Rosemary, I think we're good to go. I'm going to turn my mic off.
Looks like some people are going to be typing in their questions in the chat box area. And Marty has just asked, is the Auggie a dedicated device or can it be used also as a general PC?
Marty and everybody else, I keep saying this mantra over and over, but people, because they see it looking like an iPad, they just can't get it past. They can't get past that. It's just a PC running Windows. I'm going to repeat that. It's just a PC running Windows. Therefore, it's completely open. It's a completely open PC. The only reason I use the word dedicated right here is for insurance purposes, because that's what insurance companies want to see. While Eric is typing here, I can take just a moment here to mention about cases. I package a leatherette case with the Auggie, which is quite protective, but some people want more protection. The Auggie does fit into the eye adapter from AMDI, for which I am a reseller of. They're making one for the iPad 2 shortly, but their one for the iPad 1 does fit my Auggie. Also, I sell a rugged case. I use the Incipio Destroyer for the iPad 1, and then I modify that for shoulder strap situation, and that works for my Auggie also. So I do have rugged case capabilities with my Auggie. Oh, Eric was just typing that he has got to go.
Okay, there is a question from Shane. Is there any real fear of viruses on the Auggies?
Very good question, Shane. Shane is one of our more proficient and astute members here, at least from his reviews. It's a PC running Windows, so that means it's going to be subject to the same situation as any PC running Windows. Windows, of course, is the #1 target of any type of crazy hackers out there. My favorite free antivirus software is called AVG Free. That's Apple, Victor, Golf, AVG Free. And that is very inclusive, very nice, very updated all the time software. It's not 3G or 4G. My Auggies are not on the internet all the time, so they're only on the internet for the time that you are near a Wi-Fi situation and you've set that connection up. So it does reduce that somewhat because it's not on all the time. But there is that possibility.
Okay, looks like Dave is currently typing the chat box area.
While Dave is typing, it always gives me a minute to go deeper into something else. The last thing here that I can think of is switch access. Switch access is a little different than switch usage. Switch access means we want to access the whole device, in my opinion, by switch, everything about it. Switch use would be we have an individual app or a program that has been made switch-friendly by the developer, and we're doing something very specific within that app via switch. Personally, it's been like pulling teeth to get app developers to add basic switch friendliness and or scanning to their apps. It's unbelievably difficult. Even the ones that said they're going to do it are taking forever to do it. Right now there's only 5 that I can think of, and I'm one of them, that's giving switch access to any apps. And I don't see a lot of them coming out of the woodwork. So the real bottom line here is, yeah, and Shane is definitely acknowledging that also. The bottom line is, if you want to have a lot of switch use and switch access, I just don't think the iPad is the right tool. It's a very simple equation. They're just not coming out of the woodwork, and I've made it so simple to incorporate switch access. They don't have to do anything special. There are no fees. They just have to reprogram their app a bit. And most of them are not doing it. And even the new ones that I approach, they either say we'll go by user request, which most people don't even realize. They can contact the app developer themselves and say, hey, how about switch access? How about making your app available to people with special needs, such as physical disabilities? And they're just not doing it. I'll stop here. Oh, predictable, tap speak choice, sounding board. As I say, there are around 5, maybe 6. And I'm working with 3 others right now to get theirs going. But that's not enough. If you really need switch access or switch usage, then I think that the Auggie might be a better tool. Touch chat, not yet. He's working. They all say the same thing. I actually can send you out a list of quotes from each of the app developers telling me when they'll be switch friendly. Most of them say, not yet, but we're working on it. And they don't give me a timeline. Predictable, yes. Tap speak, yes. Sounding board, yes. Other ones, tap to talk, yes. Alexicom, yes. My rad sounds, yes. Touch chat is on the horizon. Pro Loco Go says by the end of the summer. And then there are a smattering of others. My Talkboard is working on it now. Talkboard, another one. Boy, there's just so many I can't keep track. And I have tested all of these guys because they come to me. Shane is asking, have you tested those apps with your Switch, and are they working good with the Switch? They actually come to me because I'm helping them to integrate my Switch and even AbleNet's how to do it. And I'm guiding them. Many of them don't even understand what scanning is. I have to teach them what scanning is, and about step scan, and about auditory scan. And they're incorporating my suggestions. And I usually send them at no charge one of my devices so they can test. And everything seems to be working just fine for those app developers that have the initiative to include physical disabilities when they say special needs. Oh, you bet. Right after I get off here, I'll send you that list of quotes. It's being updated all the time because I bug those people every couple of months. I say, where are you at? Here's your last quote that says it should be done by now. Is it done by now? Another area of switch access that I'd love to see that I currently don't have the time to program an app for is book access, ebook access. Right now, there's not one app developer of an ebook app that's switch friendly. Not even one. There's one for PDFs that's really meant for music, but you can actually load your own PDF in, and you can set either the AbleNet Bluetooth or either of my switch interfaces up so that you can turn the pages of an ebook that's in PDF format, which is not optimal, obviously, but it works, by switch. VBooks, which is V as in Victor, then the word book, followed by a Z as in zebra at the end, is the only app I know that its text-to-speech is incorporated with a reasonable voice and text highlighting. I've emailed them many times to the point where they won't even answer my emails anymore, bugging them about switch access. It would be so easy for them. So if you get a chance, bug your favorite ebook app developer and say, contact RJ, make your app available for special needs, physical disabilities. Gosh, it seems so simple, doesn't it? Okay, that's it.
There's a comment from Marty asks, Kindle PC can't be used with the switch from a PC, at least with the head mouse.
Interestingly, the same guy who's coming out with the Tornado, that global switch access for iPads, down at Origin Systems, Mel is his name, he's also come out with this really cool thing for Kindle and a few of the other ebook readers that actually pushes the physical button by switch on the next page button of the ebook reader, the Kindle. It's very cute. It uses a little tiny solenoid and it moves a little lever and actually pushes down on the button. I can't remember what it's called, but it's cute. It's a little pricey, as the Tornado will be, but it does make an ebook reader accessible by single switch. At least the next page button, as far as I know. Bye, everyone.